Yeah, so we have Spiro and Matt from the gaming stadium today. Part two of the gaming stadium here, just to talk about esports and their idea and what they're up to. So, Spiro, you kind of gave us a background on yourself. So today it's Matt's turn.
Cool.
Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, absolutely not at all. Where do you want to start?
Origin story, like origin story of video games and esports. Give us the history. Where did it start? Where did you first fall in love with video games?
Oh, me? Okay, so do we have enough time for that? I guess
it'll be a 5-parter.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, probably. So I guess I first started with games back when I was 7 years old. Warcraft 2 was probably one of my first games that I played, and then I just kept staying with the Blizzard universe. Yeah. Warcraft 2 to Warcraft 3, StarCraft, so on and so forth. World of Warcraft, that's a different subject entirely. Some people call
that's its own episode.
Some people call that addiction. I'm an enthusiast. Let's just put it that way. But actually, no. World of Warcraft helped a lot from a professional standpoint because when I first started the game, and about a couple years into it, I started writing about the game. I started blogging about it. So that's kind of where I got in from a journalistic standpoint. I started writing a bit about the game. I wrote about how to navigate certain challenges in the game, how to be a better player, and that kind of stuff. And eventually, I got picked up to write for AOL's Weblogs Incorporated at the time. I got noticed and picked up by Blizzard to contribute to the World of Warcraft magazine for a couple of pieces there too. And then you keep going down that road. Eventually you get to a point where you get to about 2012, 2013, and there's this small little game called Hearthstone that just came out. In addition to video games, I also used to play a lot of Magic the Gathering. It's a card game, so I love card games. So to see a digital card game from Blizzard was something I just naturally had to try out.
Right.
So I picked up the game, I started playing it, sank thousands of dollars into it, obviously. And then it got to the point where it was like, okay, there's got to be other people in the city that play this game, but there's nowhere to really go.
Right.
With Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon, you could go to card shops or hobby shops and you could play live and in person, but there was no place for Hearthstone players to go and just gather and meet up.
Right.
And it was around this time that Blizzard had also recognized this as well, and they had this initiative called Fireside Gatherings, where you could meet up with other like-minded Hearthstone players and just play a couple of games of Hearthstone or discuss the game or whatever. And the atmosphere behind that would be in a setting like a tavern.
Right.
Or a bar or what have you.
Who says tavern?
I don't know. Apparently Blizzard does. Apparently that was
you
their...
traveled to England.
You
hang out at the tavern.
Pub, yeah, exactly. So stuff like that. So that was kind of the atmosphere that they were trying to cultivate.
Yeah.
And I unwittingly started just organizing my own little get-togethers and events. My first Fireside Gathering had 4 players. Just the 4 of us. We were at the back of a comic book shop on Victoria Drive, and the name escapes me. Players wanted collectibles and something or other. I think that was the name. But so it started with just the 4 of us, and I kept doing one every couple months.
Yeah.
And then it got to the point now where Blizzard announced a program where they would do Tavern Hero qualifiers. So as a way to get into like their competitive circuit. There were 2 ways. You could compete online in a ladder system. If you place within, say, the top 100 for your region, for North America or Europe or whatever, you would get an invitation.
Right.
However, on the other hand, if you competed locally at certain sanctioned qualifiers, and if you placed in the top 4 or whatever, you would also get an invite that way.
So for those who know it, like the Magic the Gathering story, because it's a huge story, it's like the DCI point system. If you rank and your points high enough, but likewise they had like the Grand Prix and like all the stuff to get into the Pro Tour.
So there were
exact same
paths.
model, but it's like just different formats.
Correct. So it was like there's multiple paths to get in, and the Fireside scene was one way for players to get in that way. So that's kind of where I stepped in, and I just started running events at comic shops. I moved over to like UBC campuses, SFU campuses, casinos, hotel ballrooms, co-working locations. So I've pretty much
progressively bigger venues.
Bigger and bigger, and more budget involved. A lot of it was out of my own pocket just because I really loved it and no one else was doing it. And I guess Blizzard kind of took notice, and we've had a lot of conversations about what could they do to help make our lives a little bit easier or make things easier. Products, pricing, whatever. So that's how kind of all that stuff came into play. So that was pretty much the past couple of years where I just kind of steadily grew and grew and grew, and the community's been flourishing. It's been holding steady. Hearthstone's always had its ups and downs because cards, eventually it stabilizes. Everyone knows what the best decks are.
New expansion.
New expansion.
And then there's a storm of new players, and then people complain because there's a broken combo. Things get nerfed. Exactly. It teeters off again. New expansion. The cycle repeats.
It's very sinusoidal, right? So that's kind of how it goes. So that's kind of what that's basically been my story when it comes to journalism and event management in the esports space.
So, one important point to touch on that, it's basically like the progression of these tournaments and the community. Obviously, in the past, say 5-6 years, the progression must just be huge. So, at a ground level, what would you say that evolution was?
Okay, so like our first event, we had 4 players. A couple months later, the next one had about 12.
Right.
Then up to 20, then 28, 32. 40, 49 or whatever it was. So it's been steadily increasing. And there's been times where I had to turn away people because I said, hey, our Wi-Fi's at max capacity. We can't accommodate you right now. Can you come back in a couple hours or whatever? Right? So it sucks getting to the point where you have to turn away people, but it's when you get to the limitations of the venue, there's things like fire code. In our case, it's like, well, the signal strength is so at capacity. We can't accept any more connections. Yeah. So it's unfortunate, but
so I mean, it's now gotten big enough that doing this on kind of on a hobby basis, the time has come and gone. That time was, because now the community, I think it's the acceptability of playing video games more in the open, right? Because there's so many people that do. Yeah. Now, when you're putting these ads up or advertising that you're doing these tournaments, even if it's not widely advertised, so many people are showing up that you can't even run the tournaments based on bandwidth. Yeah,
and it's not only that. There's not a lot of people in the city that are willing to go through the kind of hoops that I have to run in those events.
Right.
Some places don't have proper Wi-Fi. Some internet speeds are too slow. There's, if you can try running some at Starbucks, but they'll stare at you.
Hijack the Wi-Fi.
And these are games that take hours on end, right?
Yeah.
So that's always been one of the challenges, is finding a place where you could go. And like at UBC, we had to get one of the students to could you log into everyone's computer or whatever under your student account, which it does a job. It's not ideal, but
So the first time,
and transportation is a big problem too. You really want to go to a tournament on top of SFU on a mountain, or go all the way to the west side of Vancouver where UBC is at. Not everyone has a car, so
the first time I put on a tournament when I was working at a local casino and running an esports lounge, I met Matt, and that Hearthstone tournament had 20-ish or so players, and it went really well.
Which, mind you, that's Langley.
It's it's essentially middle of nowhere from a transit perspective.
Yes.
It's impossible to get there.
There's sort of a bus.
It comes every hour. It was really bad, and but I learned a lot because the Wi-Fi that was needed, the power that was needed, but also it was in the same room as a Street Fighter and Smash Brothers tournament, and the volume needed, it was really loud, and those guys weren't super happy about that, but it went really well.
It's more of a thinking quiet game than it is.
Right.
The comparison I like to use is it's a hockey game versus people watching a game of golf. Different crowd.
Totally. So the second time we did it is we did a Hearthstone only tournament, and I didn't know Matt that well, and we had we had 40 something people come out to that one, and it went really well, but it went till 2 o'clock in the morning.
Well, games can take a really long time.
I hated this guy, man. I was like this guy, give him the venue, and I do all this stuff, and it's I gotta go home, man. I was there for 16 hours, and then I thought about it, and I was like, if I was here today for 16 hours, imagine what he's had to go through, not only today, but leading up to the event. And that's when I really got an appreciation for the dedication of what people like him do.
We got that on video, right?
Yeah, cut that. But it's so true because 5-6 years ago, when you had 4 or 6 people going to events like this, it was more to hang out and just be in a place with like-minded individuals. And now it's at the point where it's now you're scheduling multi-day events with more and more people coming. So the evolution from someone who was outside and now inside is fantastic to see. But there are challenges that come along with it, and how you navigate those is just as important as how the community grows.
Yeah, and I mean, the reason that I brought up the limitations around doing these events in different physical locations is really these things have now gotten big enough that doing them in a one-off location doesn't really work anymore. It's not going to work moving forward. It's very difficult. The logistics of it are even harder. Enter stage left, kind of the gaming stadium at this point, right? So tell us a bit about that and how that is going to solve the other issues of like size, because obviously, once you're running a 50-person tournament, you need 50 computers all logged in at the same time.
Yeah.
Not very many places can even get that Wi-Fi bandwidth unless you're calling up your service provider months in advance to try to solve this, and let alone the power issue.
Yeah.
Some conference centers have, it's like one extension cord, and it's like fantastic.
Yeah.
So how is this model of the gaming stadium going to solve this moving forward?
I just want to speak to the timing, and then I'll let Matt speak to like the logistics of like power and internet and that kind of stuff. We recently had an event, and I think we're going to touch on it later in the conversation, called the Pinnacle, which was a 2-day fighting game tournament, and we held it at River Rock, which is a fantastic venue, and the team there is top notch. But what you run into is people who don't know the space don't have an understanding that it's not going to end at a certain time. And I compare it to physical sports, right? When you're watching football or basketball or hockey, it's finite, right? Like there's the game, maybe overtime in a shootout. You have an idea of how long the game is going. Soccer's 90 minutes. There might be overtime. Baseball is untimed, right?
Yes.
And I used to work in pro baseball, and like some games take 2 hours, some games take 7 or 8 hours. There was a game in the playoffs last year that ran like it was like the longest game in history or whatever, 18 innings. Like that's 2 games, right? And so as a crew, you have to be prepared to be there for the long haul. Right. So the big thing that we learned from that is like, we had talked to them in advance about being out at a certain time, and of course, because of the nature of the beast, it went longer. So then you need to have those conversations about people staying longer. So I think the big thing for us that we solved just from a time perspective alone is like, we understand, right? So when you come into a venue like ours, you're not going to have that issue. If you go back and you watch like the VODs and you follow along on the Twitch chat, you'll see people on the second night, which is the Saturday night, and it's now probably midnight or 12:30, maybe even 1 o'clock in the morning, in the chat saying like, how do these guys still have the venue? because they know from running tournaments everywhere that like venues literally will kick you out. Like,
even if it's not finished,
we're shutting the power off, right? And so like they were like, how do these guys still have the venue? And like that alone is priceless, right?
But that goes to show like the misunderstanding of the space
100%.
And the fact that how much support are people really getting to run these things.
Venues do not understand.
And it's preventing the growth of the industry.
Totally. There was an event in Toronto called EGLX. Again, a fantastic 3-day event that I was lucky enough to attend. And a part of that was a major fighting game tournament. And that tournament was under severe time pressure because, again, it ran long, but at the convention center is like it's not their problem. You have a contract that ends at this time, we're shutting you at this time. And so like that peace of mind alone, it takes so much stress away from a tournament organizer, because now you understand, like, you can show highlight matches, your event can go a little longer and you don't have to worry. So just that alone, I think, is a massive part. But like then you get into the other logistics, and like I'll let Matt speak more to that because that's his expertise, but those are massive as well, right?
So with other concerns, I mean, for my part, it's things like power distribution, internet bandwidth, even things like simple as tables and chairs. Do we have enough people that are coming in? Where a spectator is going to hang out, if we have any spectators. So and that's always been a challenge at all these different locations that I've run stuff at, because it's never always been consistent. It's always been a great game of guess and check. Let's try this configuration and see what happens, and hopefully we don't break anything. And I've definitely blown my share of breakers and all that stuff in the past. So now we know in the future going forward is by having the stadium in place, we know where everything is, we know exactly what our maximum capacity is, and we know what kind of events we can service and handle that stuff. And if we do go over, that's okay, because now we have time on our side. So we can run like a group A at this time in the afternoon, and then we can run group B later on in the day, whatever, to help accommodate those kinds of numbers, and with the comfort that if we go over, it's not the end of the world. So that's and that's obviously a big solution to all these different challenges that other organizers are facing in the city.
And I think like that's what makes the gaming stadium so unique. Is like we have people, you know, and again I'll point to Matt and others who will be joining our team over the next few months that have this experience, and you can't buy that, right? So they know what we need. So internet specifically, like we're dealing with an amazing internet service provider, and we're gonna have a direct line that is the fastest internet in this city. Like literally, you cannot buy faster internet in Vancouver.
Not actually possible.
Right, it's not possible. And if there was, we would buy that, right? So, so we have no issues from like a bandwidth perspective.
Right.
Like it will never be. We could use this bandwidth for 10 years and never have a concern.
Right.
But it's things like that we know are going to be potential challenges. So you tackle them early. And the only way you know that is with people who have been doing this for so many years that understand what those challenges are, and then building the plan before it even starts to counterbalance those challenges. Power is like something like a lot of people don't understand. Like when you're at home, you plug, you know, a power bar in and it's feeding like a computer and a TV and a microwave and whatever. It's even then super rare that you trip that breaker.
It's very difficult.
Very difficult, right? And when you're hosting events of the size that we're hosting with the powered PCs that we have, it's like, if you don't trip them, it's a miracle.
Yes.
So so it's like
You're swinging so hard.
so it's like you're like, how many breakers are in this room? How do we distribute the power? Are we buying, you know, are we buying power bars enough that have enough power in them to not break with all these things? Like even things like that, you can't go buy a $1 power bar and expect it to work. Like our power bars are.
We learned that the hard way too.
Yeah, we learned that. But you know, the power bars we buy are really expensive, and the extension cords, you have to buy extension cords that can handle that much power, so they don't break. So it's all of these little things that just add up, and that's what we're gonna have at our stadium. Is like, we're going to have the ability to alleviate all of those concerns. It's literally like, I hate using this term because I think it's so overplayed, but like it is turnkey. You open the door and it's good to go.
And it really speaks to the experience, because I think, you know, like we all know what, you know, the audience is like, what gamers are like. You know, you could be watching a Twitch stream, and as soon as there's a tiny little bit of lag,
they'll jump right on.
You know, everyone in the chat goes nuts, right? So it's like, you know, the expectation is very high. Right?
I was
and
watching,
you guys are going to deliver that experience.
I was watching a stream before I came here today. I'm not going to say what game it is. I'm not going to call anyone out. I was watching a stream and Pro League, and it cut off in the middle of a match, died, and so the chat, you know, 20,000 people are watching, and in the chat, it's like, what happened? 5 minutes, people are refreshing and refreshing. Those things happen, but like, oof, it's tough, and that's something. Sure, we'll probably encounter at some point, but it's not on our list. You know, hopefully it doesn't.
Even
happen.
Power issues, you know, we've seen recently with, you know, with certain teams where it's like a power issue, you know, you have to default the match. Like that's tough.
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
It's the worst case scenario.
Yeah. So part of it is planning and being ready, but the other part of it is also like ensuring that you have a plan in place, so if that happens, there's something you can do. And so today, for example, I'll point to that stream I was watching. There were no moderators in the chat, and then the broadcasters themselves weren't there. So like someone should have been there to jump in the chat and say like,
here's what's happening.
There's an issue, we'll be back in 5 minutes. And then like the chat is just getting spammed, so you need a moderator to make sure that like it's being slowed down, go into subscribers only mode, or even just cut off the chat in general. Like there are things that could have been done, and so it happens at the top level, right? It's just about having a plan in place to counteract that. So
Are you going to handle that in the future? Or?
yeah, you, not me. I'll be the one like hiding in the back closet, like, tell me when it's over.
So, you know, a couple of things touched on there, but one of them was, you know, even the brackets and how big they can be because of time constraint. Good segue into the Pinnacle, because actually one of the things is that one of the brackets was actually full at, you know, was it 256?
256.
So I mean, so for a bracket for a single game to be maxed out at that in an event like that, that's huge. I mean, you know, could there have been more than 256 if you were at your own stadium?
256. Well, the answer is yes, and the reason the answer is yes is because we control the time and we control the
break it down over 2 days or whatever it is.
Yeah. So the issue with and it's not even an issue, is the facility is the facility. We only had it booked for 2 days, and that tournament was run on the second day, and so we did the math to figure out how long it was going to take. It started at 11 a.m. and ended at 1 a.m. So it was a long day. But you know, when you've got, because the thing to remember is like, we had 80 gaming setups, right? Like
Right.
80, which is a pretty big amount, but it doesn't mean it's 80 for one console.
Right.
So like it's even thinking about like, okay, I think we had like 16 Switches, Nintendo Switches for because the game was Ultimate that you're referring to, and so it's like we had 60 other monitors in the room, but we didn't have any more physical Switches.
Right.
So, now it's like for the next one, it's like, could we double? Sure.
Yeah.
If we doubled the amount of Switches, technically you could run it in the same amount of time.
Yeah.
So, so that's why for that game specifically, it's a little tough. But when you talk about like, Street Fighter or the recently announced Mortal Kombat or Tekken, like at our tournaments, they're all played on PlayStation 4s.
Right.
And we've got like 50 of them.
Right.
So if one's going a little long, you can steal some from another and just kind of fill it
a lot
in.
easier.
Yeah.
So spinning back on that point of the Pinnacle, can you guys give us a bit of a background on the Pinnacle, what it is, what its history is? Because this is like, I mean, the last one was the biggest one ever done in terms of this event, and it's probably the biggest esports event that BC's done outside, like that's local to BC.
Yeah,
obviously, we had
Dota.
Outside we had the international, but I mean that's more of like an international.
Yeah.
But in terms of like born bred tournaments, BC biggest tournament.
It's pretty close. Yeah. Pretty close.
Yeah. Do you want me to take the history? Do you want me to talk about the history?
We should probably talk about this.
I was involved prior to Pinnacle, so it's.
I don't know how in depth, how far back we can go.
No, it's So there's a local organization called Vancouver Street Battle, and they're essentially a console-based LAN center. And so you go there, and they have weeklies. It's focused on the fighting game community. So the Pinnacle was the gaming stadium's first ever fighting multi-game tournament. And so what we did is we partnered with Vancouver Street Battle. Now, prior to this event, the event itself had been called Vancouver Battle Royal, so it existed before Pinnacle. And the last three was like 350. Then the next one was just over 420. Then we got up to like just under 480 for the last Vancouver Battle Royal. What we realized is we want this event to be a major. We want it to be stop on the Capcom Pro Tour, on the Tekken World Tour, and in order to get to that level, we wanted to take the name Vancouver out just because it takes that regional focus out and makes it bigger. So we started thinking of names and looking up what was available, and we thought
took the longest part.
It was a long time. It really was and going back and forth and trying to figure it out, and we ended up on Pinnacle for a couple reasons. Obviously, number one is when you reach the top, you reach the pinnacle. But also, we live in a beautiful part of the world with so many fantastic mountains, and on a beautiful day like even today, where it's sunny outside, you can see the pinnacle of all of the mountains surrounding you. So our logo is the mountains, and that just kind of ties in. We still want it to be Vancouver, but without having it in the name. So we just held it on the 28th and 29th of December, and we had a fantastic turnout. Our total was 580 people attended over the 2 days. Over 20 games were played during that period. $10,000 prize pool, from the research that we've done, there hasn't been a locally organized tournament in the province that has reached that many. There are some fantastic events that are put on that are within that number. To give credit where credit is due, like UBC puts on an amazing tournament.
The Battle of BC.
Battle of BC is a fantastic tournament centered around Smash and some other fighting games, and they get like big numbers often as well.
Here, by the way.
And I hope they do, because then that sets the bar higher for us to beat it next time, right? So like the history is that the event has existed under a different name, and we kind of like gave new life to it under Pinnacle, which just happened in December. Just recently we actually announced in 2019, this year, it'll be back July 5th to the 7th, so we've added that third day to make sure we have enough time. We've upped the prize pool. Actually, we were doing the math the other day, and it's going to be a minimum of $20,000, which is amazing. We're really close to some big announcements in terms of like what games are going to be played, making sure that it's a major, making sure that we're getting people from all over North America to come and compete. So we really want to take this thing to the next level, and a big part of it is like putting Vancouver on the gaming map without it having to be a Dota or a League of Legends Spring Finals, which was held previously here, is like we're a local organization that focuses on the community, and so our goal is to make sure that we're putting on events for the community, but also showcases the community to people all over the world. That's kind of what we want to do. So.
I was just going to say, to give some credit, I mean, I think one of the biggest, most shared comments on Twitter and that we've heard is, just giving a lot of credit to you guys and to Vancouver Street Battle in terms of like the organizing of the event. It was such a smooth event for something of this scale, and just some credit there in terms of like that was really well executed.
It's true.
Thanks.
A lot of things could have gone wrong, but thankfully we were in a position to help to kind of prevent that and address them as they were before they could even snowball. But,
It was a lot of work. All those events always are.
A
lot of fun. Yeah, but we're so lucky because there are so many talented people in this city, and we're talking about like not just people who are talented at playing games. We're talking about people who are talented broadcasters, people who are talented producers, people who are talented streamers, people who aren't named Matt. There are so many amazing people. So like when you put the call out for an event like that, and you've got 30 people lining up to volunteer in the first day, it's like, holy cow. And then when you utilize them to the best of their experience, it just makes it so easy. I mean, people don't realize the tournament started on Friday. It was a Friday at 4 p.m. the doors opened. We didn't get access to that building until 9 a.m. that day. So like we were there at 9 a.m. that day setting up like
6-7 hour turnover.
Tables, chairs, carrying monitors, because our monitors are all in boxes, right? So like we're putting them together, we're setting them up, we're getting all the PlayStations connected, we're making sure the games are updated, power is run, like that happened in a 6-hour window.
We had to assemble chairs. Did you mention that?
We had to assemble gaming chairs.
Assemble chairs.
No, we had to build them. They were in a box.
Put the chairs together.
Wow. Like so, people don't realize how much work goes into it. But when you've got a base and a foundation of amazing people who are there to help you, it just makes life so much easier. And that's where the guys at Vancouver Street Battle come in, and all of the amazing volunteers that we had. But again, like we're so lucky in Vancouver to have that. Like we had 3 streams running concurrent with each other. Each had their own massive projector, sound, producer. Like, not everywhere in the world can find 3 people to produce and run those streams. We did, right? So, we put in a lot of work, but a large credit, like most of the credit has to go to like the team that was there, like boots on the ground, wearing the red staff shirt, ensuring that things ran smooth. And then also like a ton of credit has to go to the venue. And this kind of brings it full circle, is like when you're in a venue that has the capability to do this kind of production, it takes a lot of stress off of your shoulder because they know to make sure that the power is distributed appropriately. They do the lighting, they understand the sound, they do all of that. Whereas when you go to a venue that's just basically like, here's the keys, it's yours for the day.
Good luck.
It makes it way tougher. So again, like we're lucky in our city to have venues available to us that can handle what we needed to handle. And we're hoping, that the gaming stadium obviously becomes that for a lot of people. But there are a lot of communities out there that just don't have that. And that's what makes it harder for them. So for us, it's a combination of a lot of things, but that's where pre-planning comes in. And, we say back and forth a lot. I think the biggest mistake that we made was, what idiot scheduled it the week between Christmas and New Year's. That was probably like not the smartest decision in the world to make, because like not just for us, but like any vendor you're trying to deal with is not in the office, right? So it's like, oh hey, can you come by? I don't know, I'm in Europe, and it's like, okay, sweet.
For the players, it was great because they're on holiday, or they're on break or whatever, right? But for obviously business and partnership reasons and stuff like that, everyone's out of the office. So.
Which is why it's now in July. The other part is like the pro tours for these games typically run March to like November. So by being in that window where there isn't anything else scheduled,
there's always an option.
We become a part of a series as opposed to just like a throw-in in the holidays.
Right. Well, I mean, on the lead up to the event, we obviously helped you with the marketing of the event. Like the support from the community was coming through, right? Like for us, we run a lot of ads and create a lot of ads and, do this stuff day in, day out. But to see the level of engagement that this community has is off the chart. Like, I remember getting on the phone with you, Spiro, and it was just like, I've never seen an ad that performs this way in my life. Like these people are just so engaged. They're so excited and amped. And that I think speaks to the authenticity behind the event and the gaming stadium model, because this kind of crowd is a no bullshit crowd.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? They smell you out and they're like, you're in it for the money.
They'll call you out. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's almost like posting on Reddit. Almost, it's like if you're trying to sell something, it's like it's not going to go so well for you.
No,
Yeah, they're on
that's a good. That's understood. Yeah.
You know, so I think we've talked about this before, but you know, to reiterate it a bit, it's all about that authenticity, and if people detect it's like you're just a fly-by-night, you're trying to come in for the money, you're seeing esports as this potential advertising platform, it's like it's not going to go well for you. It's like you actually need to make a dedication to that audience, and it's going to take a bit because they're very skeptical.
Totally. Yeah. And on that point, like the numbers from the ad campaigns that we ran with you guys bore that out. Like without getting into specifics, like we went under budget and we way overperformed what we thought we were going to do.
Right, in terms of signups, visitors, et cetera.
Totally. Like I remember, I think it was the second day that our campaign was running, Ricky was like, 15 people have signed up since we started running. And it's like, oh, the whole month ad campaign is now paid for in 2 days.
Yes.
Because of the amount of people who signed up, right? So it's like, so
right.
when you start to break it down like that, it makes total sense. And then of course our CPM rate was like super low and we went under budget. So like the community is great because you can be so focused.
Yeah.
And your dollar goes so much further with the community.
Yeah. But you need to know who they are and how they behave, and
totally,
because you know, I've talked to a few different advertisers, you know, or people that would want to sponsor or be part of the community, and I'm like, well, are you just doing this because you need quarterly revenue?
Yeah.
Or is this like a long-term play for you? Because like you can't just try to throw your chips in there for a quick win. Like that's not how this works. And you know, and if your guidelines on what you can and can't say are very specific, it's like that may not work for you, because like we know this audience, and like, you know, you guys have taught us a lot about the audience as well. It's like unless you really are invested in it and speak their language, they're gonna smell you. They're gonna see you coming, and that's, you know, even if they don't say anything, they're just gonna ignore you. Right.
Yeah, and that's such a good point, because when the ad campaign was being built, you know, when you guys were sending us like copy points that were going to be included, they were so on target with the audience that was going to receive them, and that's like super vital, to the point now where like if we are going to do some stuff on our own, like send out a tweet or send out, like we're going to you guys and saying like, hey, how does this sound, and making sure that we're The other thing I want to point out on the ad side is again, we had 580 people. Over 20% were not from British Columbia. So
that's actually a really high percentage for people for a tournament of that size.
So we
like
had
people like flew in or like bussed in or drove whatever it is.
So from Alberta and Washington combined, we had over 80 people from Alberta and Washington combined.
That's awesome.
We had Texas, France, South Korea, Hong Kong. Like it was, and again, that's their like address that's listed on the page. So they lived there at one point. Whether or not they still live there, we don't know. That's the address they put in. But like over 20% of the 580 people were from outside of British Columbia. And if you added like Vancouver Island to that, like now you're talking about 25%, right? Because we have quite a few people from the island come over. So it goes to show you that when you're building these campaigns, it's very important to focus on your local area, but you also have to be like willing to go above and beyond. And I'll give an example. About 2 weeks before our tournament, there was a major tournament down in the University of Washington. A major Smash tournament that had over 1,000 people registered. We knew about it, and so we connected and said, like, we want to run a campaign that's literally just at the University of Washington, right? We want to target just these 1,000 people. And like, by knowing what's happening in your surrounding area, you build like a low-cost, high-efficiency campaign just to target those people, and then there's no doubt in my mind the correlation with the amount of people that signed up from that state and doing that campaign, like, is huge, massive. So yeah.
I mean, you know, from the ad side, to get, you know, a bit more maybe like jargony on it. It's all about, the further out you go from whatever center you're doing this on, it's all about targeting the heavy users. Like, and you know, and there's a massive difference, huge difference between your casual person that'll show up as a visitor, maybe compete, even though they know they don't really. They know that they can compete and have fun, but they're not going to come top 8, right?
Yeah.
It's like
they want money,
right? And there's other groups that are like, okay, I have a fighting chance of actually making top 8, and those are like your heavy users. Like these are the guys that are like legitimately practicing at home, not playing the game. They're playing the game and practicing at the same time. And understanding the nuances between those different groups within the greater group of like this esports world is the key, because people think that fighting games and all the other games behave the same way. Like their users are the same. It's like they could not be more different.
Yeah.
Like it's like it's an apple to an orange.
Yeah.
It's not even an apple to an orange because it's edible. It's like it's an apple to a golf cart.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's like you can't eat the golf cart. Right.
It's true.
So you can try.
You can try, yeah. Good luck.
but that's really what it is, and people are kind of putting this under the blanket of, well, it's esports, it's video games. It's like, well,
it's all the same, which it's not.
It's not even close, right?
Yeah.
Like an MMO player versus a shooter player, it's like sometimes they overlap, but I mean, but if you go like purebred MMO player versus a guy that exclusively plays shooters, it's like those people are completely different. Or to Matt's point earlier, a Hearthstone player versus a fighting game, it's like, I want silence because I have to think of what card to play versus like, people like cheering in the background and going nuts, right?
I was actually at the Pinnacle and I was asking Matt, like, where are the Hearthstone players? Because you've got everybody in, with the main stage. You got to go upstairs, around the corner, and they've got their own little section. Where they're all sitting, going head to head.
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, up until the point where there's actually like operational realities of running those tournaments, where you have to like put them in a quieter space. But it goes to show you like the breadth of the type of person that plays like different types of games. Like you have introverts, extroverts, you have everyone, and everyone in between in terms of their interests, right? Because some of the data that we looked at really quickly, even while running the campaigns and who these people were, it's like people that play fighting games are like sports a bit more. People that like other types of games like sports less. So like it's correlated with other things, and there's like a profile of each individual person. And sometimes the thing is that because I think video games are like people that play video games, it's now becoming more and more acceptable. But like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it wasn't. Targeting these people, say on like a Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is, where the data's there. Some of these people that play video games that are actually very deep in don't like advertise that they're playing these games, but you still have to find them somehow and get in front of them, because otherwise, how can you build a community more?
And it's very well said. And there are so few games that like ever break that barrier down. Like the one right now is obviously Fortnite. Like everyone plays Fortnite, right?
Yes.
So like, but games like that are like generational. Like they don't come along often, right? So and I think I mentioned this previously, but the best way to describe it, and this is, I was listening to a radio interview with Rick Fox, who is a former professional basketball player, multi-time world champion, founder and owner of Team Echo Fox. He broke it down to the person who doesn't understand, and he compared it to the Olympics, not from a competitive standpoint, but said the Olympics is the banner, right?
Yeah.
That's what the event is called, the Olympics. But underneath that, you've got floor dancing, you got ski jumping, you've got bobsleigh, you've got ice hockey, you've got all. Just because you're good in one doesn't mean you're good in the other. And it's the same thing. So esports is the banner, but all of the games that fall under the banner are so different. So sure, it falls under a category, but it doesn't mean that because you're good at one, you're good at another. That's not the case. Like,
otherwise it'd be amazing at everything.
that's debatable.
Can we cut that, please?
So there's like, it's an education process, but it's so right when you're targeting certain individuals for certain games. Like when we're doing a Fortnite event and we're promoting Fortnite, you can be more broad with the type of gamers you're trying to target because almost everybody plays. But when you're talking about a game specifically, like Rainbow Six or like Mario Kart or like Street Fighter or Smash Brothers, the communities are extremely different. sometimes within a community, like the fighting game community, at the bigger events, you'll see people register in multiple games. It's not because like they like to play every game. It's because they're traveling typically to go to these events, and you're going to be there for 3 days.
Yeah, it's bang
you might
for
as
buck
well
thing.
just you might as well just register
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
But that's not commonplace.
No.
Like more commonplace is, you know, I play this one game, I stream this one game, I watch this one game, and that's where my focus
Yeah.
is. Even as a casual player myself, like there's a bunch of games that I love to play, but even me, like when I'm focused on one game, like that's the game that I play.
Yeah.
And then when I find another one, I play that game. It's very
Right.
rare that I'm jumping on a daily basis, game to game to game to game.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially now, like if you want to talk 10 years ago when you're talking about console-based gaming, it's much easier to talk about that because you just switch the discs or whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But when you're playing these new esports or PC-based esports games, every game is a competition.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's casually doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like you're playing to win every single game.
Yeah.
So you don't want to jump between games
Yeah.
because you want to get better at that one until you get to a point where it's like I either can't get better or it's like something else has come out that I want to
That's
try
better.
and I'm gonna
Yeah.
move over. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So on that note, like, what's the future of streaming? You know, Twitch came out. You know, it's owned by Amazon. For those that don't know, I think they bought it for insanely low amount. Like they stole it pretty much.
Yeah.
I think they're paying back their initial investment like every week right now or something ridiculous.
If they haven't, like it's crazy. Yeah.
You know, so Twitch, kind of brought this at the forefront. There's a few other services now that are kind of coming out. They're getting some traction, obviously not as much. What, in your guys' opinion, and we'll start here with Matt. The next 3 to 5 years, like, what's the future of streaming in your opinion?
I think with regards to streaming, like Twitch is still probably going to be the biggest one. I don't know if there's going to be another service that displaces it.
Yeah.
I don't know any off the top of my head right now, and all the ones that are.
If it is, it doesn't exist yet.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, it's true. Like, people thought MySpace would still be around right now, but you know what
Right.
I mean? So we never know. But in terms of like to say actual stream development and stream engagement, I do think it's gonna keep progressing. You're gonna see more streamer viewer engagement. That stuff is gonna go up. That technology is gonna increase because now we've got things like raffles or giveaways that are
Right.
that's being developed, and there's all these great digital tools where you can do things like polls or like if you're watching a game on TV, you can even text you could text a number that says I think Team A is going to win versus
Right.
Team B or whatever, and that kind of technology, that kind of decision making is now going to jump into the hands of viewers where they can get more interaction and things like who do you think is going to make the next ace or who's going to make the
Right.
next big play or like whatever. So that kind of stuff is going to come into play. And that part I know, like some elements of that technology is already here.
Yes.
So
It's just not widespread
it's
yet.
correct. It's not quite
Yeah.
widespread yet. It's not widely adopted, and I think a lot of streamers are still kind of trying to figure out how to utilize it and take advantage of those services. After that, though, it's hard to say. Yeah, I can't think of anything else that.
Will it be more
into.
acceptable? Do you think? Because right now, like,
stream?
people, like, look, if you went into a room full of random people and you said, "I watch video games on Twitch," like, people would be like, "What?"
Yeah,
But
I think
but
some people
even-
get that,
even-
but then you'll get a couple
yeah.
more and be like, "What channel?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. But
Who are you watching?
exactly.
Stuff like that.
Whereas now it's like it's the same thing as watching
Yeah.
like hockey or whatever. It's like you're watching this game, but people's like the acceptability isn't quite there yet.
You're right,
Like,
yeah.
what do you think? Where do you think it'll be like in say like 3 years and 5 years? Like,
Yeah,
what,
I think it's going to keep trending down. Like my generation is cutting cords.
right.
They're not watching stuff on TV anymore. They're watching stuff on like YouTube. They're watching Twitch or
Yeah.
whatever. So there's all these because they're getting all this content available for for free.
Yeah.
And if they like somebody, they'll chip in and donate and all that stuff. They'll subscribe. But in terms of that regard, like I think the next couple of years, it's just going to be a lot of. A lot of streamers will become more prominent. Like
Yeah.
right now, it's just Ninja. He's widely known. He was on
Yeah.
Ellen, all that stuff. He might be the first of a few that might be making that jump there.
Yeah.
We don't know if someone else might.
Well, he
go
broke
Colbert or
he
someone
broke
else
the
will
ground,
go-
which
Yeah.
which helps everybody else because everybody can
Exactly.
line up behind him.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like
He set that standard for everyone.
Exactly.
Right? Now
Yeah.
it's more acceptable now
Yes.
that it's okay to be a streamer, to go on these talk shows and discuss what you do as a
Right.
as a professional and for a living. So he's kind of opened that doorway for a lot of people who. Maybe initially they thought, I'm just going to do this for fun or
Yeah.
as a hobby, as a side hustle or something like that. So, but yeah.
I think there's two separate conversations. Like one is streaming in general, and one is Twitch specifically. So
Yes.
when you talk about streaming in general, it's really interesting because like I'm gonna speak about regionally here, but we have a channel called CTV,
Right.
and that channel hosts a lot of amazing programming. But when you watch it now, and they show a commercial of something that's going to be on their station, it doesn't say live Tuesdays at 5 or tune in. It actually now says streaming Tuesday at 5.
Yes.
Right.
So like they've actually changed their language to say that the show is now streaming. So like that means it's like it's on their television platform, it's on their digital platforms, but like they're trying to educate and get people to now have that term as a normal day-to-day conversation.
Yeah.
So like, oh, what, I saw this amazing show on TV. Oh, really? When is it? It streams Tuesday at 5.
Yeah.
Like that's what they want it to become. And they're the first of many, right? So they're trying to change the conversation to make the term streaming more widespread.
Right.
So that helps everything.
Yeah.
With Twitch specifically, Amazon is at the forefront of so many amazing technological breakthroughs that they have things like that they're working on and brewing that like we haven't even thought of.
Yeah.
Right? And so you look at the evolution of certain things like, how Twitch streamers are making revenue from ads and from different, donations and subscriptions and stuff like that. Like what's Amazon's plan for the future? Amazon is looking to get more and more people revenue by bringing in the affiliate program and making it easier to start getting subscriptions and stuff like that. So I think the goal is like, they have 2 million active streamers on their platform, right? Like it's unheard of.
The billions of minutes being created.
Oh my God,
is like
crazy.
is off the charts.
It's off the charts. And so I think when you talk to people now in generalities, when you're like, oh, I like to watch video games. Oh, where do you watch them? Oh, I watch live streams. People understand what live stream means.
Yeah.
But not everybody still gets like what Twitch is. You still have, when you say it's a live stream service, oh, okay, I know what that means. I can watch something live. So I think there's still a bit of a generational shift that's happening to become more. But like, I'll give an example. It's so easy to convert people. So I was at a golf tournament, and the golf tournament was put on by the Vancouver Canucks. And in my foursome was Alexander Edler, who is a prominent player on the team. And he was asking me what I do, and we were talking, and he had no idea. He used to play games as a kid. We sat down at our table for dinner, and he asked me again, and he's like, oh, can you explain this? I said, here's what I'm going to do. I pulled out my phone, and I opened Twitch. I said, what's your favorite game of all time? Resident Evil 2. When I was a kid, I played that game so often. Cool.
Boom.
I opened Resident Evil 2. There's 2 people streaming. The first one had like 100 people watching. I clicked on it, and I opened it, and he was just like, I'm like, there's 100-something people watching this. And he's like, I remember this part. She's going to go around the corner, and this is going to happen. And you could see in his face, it was like childhood, right?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
You could see it. And like
the value of nostalgia is never to be
massive.
underestimated.
Oh my gosh.
Never.
And so like, he had never heard of Twitch before. And in the span of 45 seconds, I was able to show him exactly what it does for him. And so like, whether or not he ever watched it again, doesn't matter. He now knows what it is. So when someone brings up that conversation, it's so easy for him to call back to that exact moment and say, okay, now I remember. And so the beauty of all of this is because technology is so advanced that within a minute, you don't even have to say a single word. Open your phone, you open it, and people just get it right away. When I worked in the casino industry and I was pitching this whole esports idea, some of the higher ups didn't understand. I said, come to my computer. And I opened Twitch. There's a poker section. There's a casino section. There's people playing virtual slots. I'm like, look at these people. There's
people are watching this.
1,000 people watching this guy play slots. And all of a sudden you see the light bulb start to come on. That's all that it takes. So it's just that constant education from a Twitch specific perspective that is gonna need to continue to happen to grow that. But streaming in general, I think, is like, it's on the precipice of being a term that everybody uses on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too when you look at the behavior of how people are using Twitch, because you have people that are very engaged where they're specifically like watching something and paying attention to it, but then you have a lot of people where they've got multiple monitors. They've got Twitch on those monitors. They're watching. They're kind of like they're listening. They're waiting for like a moment if something interesting happens. And I would say that's similar to like you're at home cooking and you've got something on the TV like a cooking show. It's in the background. You're not really fully watching it, but it's in the background, right? And so yes, there's times when you're going to watch something like full on, your attention is there, but a lot of the time it's people are watching it kind of casually and it's kind of in the background.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because like if you talk to people when they're young and you ask 10 people, if you grow up and you could be a movie star or a television star, would you do that? 9 out of 10 would say yes. Then if you ask, do you believe it's actually doable? 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 would say yes. What Twitch does and other live streaming services do is allow you to be that.
Yes.
And you do it all on your own.
Yeah.
You set up your broadcast, you do whatever you want, right? It can look the way you want it to, it can feel the way you want it to, it can sound the way you want it to. You can create whatever content you want to, and you essentially become that, de facto television or movie star. Sure, you might only have 1 or 2 people watching you, but you get to share that passion.
Yeah.
And that's something that's so cool, because it's not just about video games anymore. There are people who
they're singing online and
singing,
playing
dancing,
whatever.
Social eating, where people just literally sit there and order food and eat and talk to people that are watching them, right? So that'd be good for Matt. I'm gonna crush this tomahawk in 30 seconds. But there's so there's all of these amazing categories now that you can go into, and so it really allows people to bring out a side of them, a creative, artistic side that they never got the opportunity to share with the public before. And that's what's so cool about it. And then on top of that, it's live.
Yeah.
And so when it's live, you get that instant feedback and instant interaction. Yeah. And so sure, sometimes it takes thick skin, but you still get the opportunity to interact with people all over the world, on a live basis. And that is something that if you asked my dad 30 years ago if that would ever be a thing, no chance.
No chance. So on the note of that, advertising on Twitch, right? This is where I think it's really interesting from a marketing sales perspective or a brand recognition perspective. When I look at the people, the advertisers that have gone to sponsor streamers, so smart. Because advertisers always complain it's really hard to target younger demographics. It's hard to target the 20 to 30-year-olds right now because they're more mobile native. They're not on TV. They don't listen to the radio. That's for sure. So people are like, how do we get in front of these people? And I'm like, there's Twitch and there's streamers and influencers. This isn't rocket science in one way, but if you actually dive in beyond that, the audiences are very discerning. So it is difficult. The place where they congregate is Twitch and YouTube and things like that, but the messaging is tough. So a few examples off the top of my head, Rocket Mortgage, brilliant, right? Especially for streamers that have more of an audience that's a bit older, 18 plus. It's that. Well, that's brilliant. North America, it's people need mortgages, and between 20 and 30 years old, they're gonna move out, and they're gonna buy a house, right? Or Uber Eats. And you know what's something really interesting that I found about the advertisers on Twitch that are sponsoring streamers, etc.? The companies, when you look at them, every single one of them, insanely high growth. They're all those companies are super aggressive on growth. They're on there. Why other people don't look at that and say I want to grow? It's well, look at the most aggressive people on growth. Do what they do. Right? I think that it's going to become more mainstay where people are going to clamor and fight over these streamers and the Twitch, ad platform.
Yeah. The beauty for advertisers on Twitch is numbers don't lie. So if you're sponsoring a streamer or promoting with a streamer, you can see how many people are watching. So they cannot lie about that. You can also see the chat and see if people. You can also see what their personality is like. Because if they're not a fit for your brand, you don't want them to be associated with your brand. And you go back to the YouTube adpocalypse where it's all of these major brands came in and were sponsoring, promoting their brands through YouTube. And then their ads were being seen on videos that were maybe not good for children or contained swearing.
But you can control that.
Right. And now it's to the point where YouTube has they have algorithms that ads get connected to certain people. So what that's done is it's taken some of the original content away, because if you do your video this way, this advertiser's not gonna your monetization goes down.
But to that point, navigating that as a standalone brand, insane.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. You're gonna try to become an expert in what streamers are a fit for you. It's you have to partner with somebody.
You do.
At that point, you have no choice. And and that's kind of the space that you guys occupy and we occupy. That's kind of the cross section. You guys understand that gaming side. And the audience, and so do we, and it's just different angles, right? You guys are bringing people in to create a community. We're trying to target those people so that they'll actually come in, and spread the word, as it were, right? So,
and it's way more cost effective. Like for brands,
Oh, yeah.
it's way more cost effective.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so like,
Much more,
Yeah.
like, I'll say this about the esports audience in terms of even all as much as there's tons of separate pockets, very brand loyal.
Yes.
Like, once they're hard to win over,
But once you get
but
to
once you,
yeah.
they're like lifers. Like, I bought the same keyboard like 7 years in a row. I've gone through 3 remodels, like slight adjustments. Keep buying the same one.
Yep.
I'm never gonna not buy the same one
Yep.
unless somebody can really put something good in front of me.
no, it's
You know?
it's very true, and you see that across the board. And so, if you're a company that's new and you're looking for early adopters, it's an amazing space. If you're an established company and you're looking to grow,
Yeah.
it's a great, like, it works for everyone. The key is like understanding who you're trying to reach and
Yeah.
then partnering with the right people to find those individuals that are going to speak your language, because you could look, and we actually like casually had this conversation a couple
Yes.
of days ago, where it's like you look at someone like Ninja and their audience,
Yeah.
right, or PewDiePie and their
Yes.
audience, and then you look at someone like Dr. Lupo and
Right.
their audience, drastically different.
Yeah,
right?
it's totally different.
Totally different. So understanding who you're speaking to,
Yeah.
is a very important part of, and it goes back to like promoting tournaments and doing ads
Yeah.
on tournaments.
Yeah.
It's the same with Twitch. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if there are brands out there that are like on the fence, like, oh my god, just do it. Like, it'll do so much for your
Yeah.
brand. Oh yeah, especially if you partner with the right people.
We're running out of time here, so Matt, favorite video game of right now, favorite video game of all time, and go
I was gonna say World of Warcraft.
now and before.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I never.
and forever.
It's not an addiction, I swear. It's an enthusiast.
I just play vanilla just because I want to.
Yeah.
It's like ice cream, man.
Most popular.
Yeah, that's right.
Spiro, right now.
My favorite game right now is Rainbow Six Siege.
Yeah.
Play it like all the time. Play with these two clowns. It's just an amazing experience. Favorite game of all time is the easiest question I could ever answer is Mario 64.
Yes.
Mario 64 for me was like a game changer because it was like the real first 3D open world game where you could like take Mario and just go anywhere.
Yeah.
And that was the one that really said to me at a young age, like, I want a career in this.
Yeah.
Like that was
Yeah.
the game that was just like boom to me. So yeah, I still play it. Like it's so good. It's so good. Yeah.
Yeah, Rainbow Six, so good. If you ever want to get shot in the back.
Yeah, this
If you ever want to get
shoots
shot
me in the back. Yeah.
But yeah, Mario RPG for me.
Mario
That-
RPG.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
a throwback, but
Yeah,
it's
very
just,
old game, yeah.
it was so good for its time, and it still is incredible. But
Yeah.
love that game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For myself, actually, like before from past, Final Fantasy 11 online. I was like, I've always been like a really big fan of all the Final Fantasies.
Yeah.
And then when Final Fantasy 11 online came,
Yeah.
I was just like, that was the addiction.
First,
I think Ninja still plays that on stream
Like
sometimes.
Final Fantasy 11 is like it's like the hardest
Yeah.
RPG like ever.
It's very
It's like,
technically-
it's one of the hardest ones that was ever created,
Mm-hmm.
but it was like so rewarding when you accomplished something. It felt like you really accomplished something.
Yeah.
They made you work for it.
This
Yeah.
is where we disagree because the day I quit that was when I lost 2 levels in a single day, and I was like, I'm out.
You grinded for like 8 hours and
So-
you just
Yeah.
lost levels.
Yeah. I'm done.
That's what made it good though.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's refreshing.
Yeah. I think that's the beauty of video games in general is
Yeah.
like you can sit here and talk about what you like and you don't like, and you can debate that conversation
Yeah.
So we
forever.
don't have a battery life.
You could constantly like go back and forth. But whatever somebody says, there's like that. Oh yeah, like you totally. So
yeah.
it's just.
I also like Diablo on the other
Yeah.
extreme, so it's like
Yeah.
there you go, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Are we
Is that
running
an
out
out
of
of season April Fool's joke, or do you legitimately like
What?
Diablo? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't have to turn your brain on for that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hack and slash your way through.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Are we good on battery?
We should wind up because you've got a call in a minute.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you do.
Yeah.
It's like 1:59.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that you guys wanted to touch on before? Like anything you want to say? Did we go off the
We're doing
rails?
extended scenes later.
Extended scenes later. Behind the scenes.